I'm Simon from Co-Working Days, and our next session is a fireside chat about how remote work is helping us rethink the future of teams. Very important topic at the moment, and the people who are taking part in the fireside chat are Kieran Flanagan, the VP of Marketing for HubSpot, and Vallée from Tehama, the remote workforce platform. Over to you guys.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you very much, Simon, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here today. My name is Vallée, and I'm the CEO of Tehama. Maybe a quick intro for me. I'll be interviewing Kieran today, and he's our real star attraction. A quick intro for me. Tehama is a virtual office as a service platform. So what we do is we create a cloud-based virtual infrastructure that permits our enterprise customers to create desktops and then securely connect those desktops to their highly secure enterprise data assets. Tehama was born inside Pythian, which is a remote work company of long standing. And in that context, I've led remote teams to the tune of about 400 people. So that's basically my background. Kieran, however, is our star attraction today. Kieran is indisputably one of the industry's leading product-led marketing and product-led growth experts. He has a background that includes stints at Salesforce and Marketo, and has been a driving force behind HubSpot, itself a marketing automation company, incredible product-led growth, first out of a European effort, and then eventually now leading marketing for all of HubSpot. So we're very privileged to have this time with Kieran today. Kieran, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about remote work.
Fantastic. Our marketing team was particularly thrilled when they learned that we'd be chatting today, because HubSpot is such a valuable platform for our own demand generation programs, and we're huge fans. Can you tell us a little bit about HubSpot as a business, just to introduce your context that you'll be bringing to the conversation about remote teams?
Yeah, HubSpot kind of really started, I think, as you said, as a marketing automation company, and we helped small to medium-sized companies grow through better marketing. Pretty well known for inbound marketing, how you can kind of generate long-term value and create a great customer experience. And over time, we've kind of transitioned into being more of a front office platform where we help marketing, sales, customer success, and really help your business find a better way to grow. And that's what we're very, very passionate about.
Awesome. And just to set the stage for our discussion about the future of teams and the future of work and how we can create well-gelled teams and leadership, tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, we have all had our own personal experience of this emergency transition that has occurred over the last 6 months and the resulting, entering into the sustainment phase. Tell us a bit about your journey at HubSpot, and tell us what happened and what your experience with it was.
Yeah, I joined HubSpot to, like most, when you're kind of growing a business, what tends to happen is you grow from the States and then you're growing really rapidly and you want to open up a European base to grow internationally. And usually you'll open a European base in London, Amsterdam, Dublin, and sometimes Berlin, Paris, and some of the core cities. And so luckily for me, HubSpot chose Dublin, and I kind of joined really the first group of about 12 to 17 people based outside of the States to grow this kind of international business. And it was a lot of fun, but it was traditionally done like in office, right? Build the office, get the people in the office, and then grow internationally. And that went really, really well. And what happened was the founders asked me to come and help this incredible team within HubSpot who were helping to reshape the company's go-to-market to be more freemium, product-led. So you can come in now today and try all of HubSpot's tools for free before you have to actually pay us any money. And they said, hey, typically that's a global role. Most of the people who you're going to be working with and you're going to hire and work for you are going to be based in the States. And so like, can you move to Boston? And the week they asked me, something incredibly upending in my personal life happened, like just completely unexpected. And I didn't really tell work about what it was. And I said, I actually have to kind of stay put. Like, this is my dream role. I've always wanted to lead a core part of a global initiative for a fast-growing company like HubSpot, but I just can't move. And so I was very, very fortunate that they believed in me enough to do it from Dublin and said, you can build a team from Dublin and try to make it work. And luckily for me, it worked. And that's how I started managing remote. It's how I started to really think about remote, how remote helped me personally in my own career, but also then how I should approach remote as a remote leader.
Fantastic. So your remote leadership predates the COVID emergency by a number of years. Can you tell us about how, maybe how you first onboarded your remote teams?
Yeah, so when I remember when I first got introduced, because I got given this role, I was very excited, and there was an existing small team that were based in Boston, and I was going to start to really expand rapidly and add to this team. And I remember my very first call to be introduced to the team back in 2016. We had to do it through like GoToWebinar, I think, or GoToMeeting, and there was no video, and it was like me on a dial-up, like me on a phone and trying to like get some interaction with people, and it just blows my mind how much easier it is today. Like when I was one of the real first people, I think there was a couple of people working remote at kind of that exact level within HubSpot, but there wasn't the kind of blueprint, and we were trying to figure it out as we went. And luckily for me, HubSpot are just so good at trying to, if it's something that's really good for employees and they think it benefits employees, they really do invest in it. And so we made rapid progression. So I think when you think about how I onboarded employees in 2016, it was a lot of trial by error. I think I ended up, which is not great for your personal life, but I ended up working Dublin hours and US hours. Like you would work the Irish day because I was just used to doing that. And then I would work the Boston day because
technology solves a lot of problems, but it does not solve the time zone problem. It's so painfully true.
But what happened was we've just got so much better at working remote, and that doesn't happen to me as much. Like you kind of just needed to be interacting with people. You needed to be in those meetings. And I think over time, when you get better at remote, we can talk about this, like how it just helps you to create better practices, communication practices. I think you can do a lot more things, asynchronous, like communication, where you can get updates and things, and you don't need to always be interacting with each other in real time. You still do need that. We can talk about that. Like I'm good because I'm an evening person anyway, so I still have good overlap time with most of the offices and most of the people I work with. I think you do need some overlap time, but also you can get a lot done without having to be in the same time zone.
Well, tell me this. So give us a sense of the size and scope of your team. How many direct reports do you have? Are they all remote now, and were they remote pre-COVID?
Yeah, the group is about 65 to 70 people, and my direct reports is probably about 6. And everyone is always, for the most part, being remote to me. Like secretly, I would love to have just built the whole team in Dublin at that time because remote was so new to me. It would have just been easier. But the first thing that remote kind of really helped me to change my perception on is, wow, if you hire for remote, the world that you can hire from is just so much bigger. You just have so much more opportunity. And so because I was based in Dublin and I knew that most of the people I was going to be hiring were not going to be based in Dublin, I actually ended up not caring for the most part where people were based. And so I started to hire people both in office in the US office in Boston, but a lot of people actually just by default started to be remote because it didn't matter really to me. And I was learning how to do this remote thing. So I have about 6 direct reports. Everyone is remote from me. They're kind of dotted across. A lot of them are based in the States in Boston. And one is based in Europe, but they're all remote from me. And then the group, probably it's like, I don't have the exact number. It's probably 30 to 40% all remote, like people working from their house, and then a combination of people who work in office. But even the people who work in office, if you actually kind of got the data, they're probably all hybrids. Like everyone kind of works some amount of time from home.
Awesome. I'm going to seize this opportunity to remind the audience that this is absolutely happening live right now, and that I am monitoring for questions on the live discussion tab in Swapcard. So please join our conversation. I'm going to continue to direct, and I have some questions prepared, obviously, but I would love to weave in conversations from the audience as we interact with Kieran here. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have a thought leader like this at our disposal. So I'm going to seize the opportunity so long as no one's asking questions, but please, by all means, join us. Let's talk about leading remote teams and people and practices to start. In our preparation discussion, you made some interesting points about how leadership and remote leadership are actually the same. But I still want to just, I want to prompt you, and I want to say, what are the most important traits in the leader then? Now that you know that remote leadership is the same as leadership, what are the most important traits and key characteristics that are must-haves for successful leaders in this post-COVID world?
Yeah, and I think this is a great topic maybe for people to get involved in and debate, because it's one of the more controversial topics I see, which is, okay, we're going to hire a remote, if you're in a hybrid office, right? Because if you're in a remote first company, you're generally just hiring people and everyone's going to be remote. But still a lot of companies, they go, okay, well, do they have these characteristics or traits or previous experience working remote? And that's the kind of person that we want. And I think that inherently is biased, right? Because there's not that much. I think the big difference between a great remote leader and a person who just is a great leader within office is just the want to actually work remote, right? The most differentiate factor is, do you enjoy working remote? Do you enjoy working remote or not? Like if you're a good leader and you enjoy working remote, that you're going to be pretty good as a remote leader. If you're a great leader and you really just dislike working remote, then you're probably not going to be a great remote leader. And if you think about some of the common traits we hear, so the leader needs to be proactive. They need to be like, this is the thing I hear when I hear people saying, oh, well, we need to hire this manager. They're going to hire remote teams. They need to be proactive. They need to be really great at communication. They need to be a good writer. I think you do need to be a good writer of sorts as a leader. You don't need to be like a novelist, but being able to communicate your thoughts, articulate your thoughts through written word is really important. And more so now, we can talk about this, but through video, I think is becoming more important. If you instill agile processes on your team, keeping teams aligned, if you said all those things and remove the word remote, you would want all of your managers and leaders to have those things, right? They're just not specific to the environment that you work in. And I think the most important thing for me is what remote work fundamentally helps you do is provide options for people who do their best work somewhere else than in an office. And if you're the remote leader who actually does their better work not in the office, but as a remote employee, then it's a really great thing for you to do. And I think you will succeed in it. But if that's not where you do your best work and you do your best work within the office, then it may be more of a struggle.
One of the things that I observed in my career leading large teams that were all remote was that, remote work comes as a package. We sort of assumed, the enterprise world generally assumed that it would be a productivity decline, but a morale boost because they saw being able to work from home as a perk. But what we've actually noticed is the productivity is actually quite nicely sustained, at least for office work. White collar work, the work that you can do remotely. But at the same time that the productivity has been sustained, we're starting to see signs of something that I've experienced many times, which is that people tend to have a higher struggle connecting emotionally to their business and connecting emotionally to their colleagues and teammates. And some people rely on that social dynamic to stay, to keep their real oomph in terms of their engagement at work. What would you, as a really seasoned remote leader, what are the practices that you would recommend to maintain that cohesion and appetite to stay and strive for a business in a fully remote team?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Because if you think, and you've probably had a lot of these conversations with companies where every company obsesses over replacing the water cooler moments. And that's what we've kind of framed this water cooler moment. For the most part, what people mean is like a personal interaction. Like the water cooler moment is kind of sprung up as, oh, well, how do you replace this moment of interaction that happens within an office, outside of the office? But what we're really saying is, how do you replace organic personal interaction? And you have to be real that you cannot replace that. That is an in-person experience. That is not a experience that you can connect or you can make through video. And I think you can do all of these things where you can have fun events and use your Slack donut apps and use all of these different apps to connect people and try to talk about non-work subjects. But if certain people need a personal connection and to be in the presence of someone to feel that, then that's why you see a lot of remote companies still do retreats in a time, of course, pre-COVID, that even for me, doing remote leadership and really being passionate about remote and really enjoying working remotely, I still know that the face-to-face contact is still an important thing to have as part of your kind of remote playbook. And it doesn't mean you have to be doing that every month or every quarter, but there's some amount of time that you want to spend with your colleagues in person. The other fascinating thing is, it's kind of related to this, is I think one of the things companies really think about is, how do I build a culture? If I'm a remote company, if I have a lot of people outside of the office, and I was trying to mull this over this week. And when I was, working in the early stage of my career, always within office, a lot of how I thought about culture was just, it's the office drinks, or it's the office night out, or it's like all of these kind of social things that happen outside of the office. And I don't know if that's the culture anymore. I think what people generally want from companies is, they want to work with companies that exhibit the same values as them. Like, I think people really have a set of values, and they want to see that reflected in the company they work in. And you don't. And the other thing is, like, that culture of like being seen out at the dinner, being seen at the team event, at the drinks. It's not a very inclusive environment, because if you have children, if you have other reasons you can't attend those things, that shouldn't be the company culture we strive for. And I think companies, even if you're remote, if you have a set of values, you can connect people to those values on an ongoing basis, regardless of like the location they're in.
That's phenomenal. One of the observations that I have is that we actually have an opportunity to accelerate our diversity and inclusion goals as part of our remote work strategy. Our workplaces are all inherently accessible to for example, our handicapped employees right now, because they're working from their homes that they've spent enormous amount of personal effort to make and optimize for accessibility for them. And in a sense, because we're digital by default, all of our networking opportunities, all of our team building opportunities, all of our collaborative opportunities are also equally accessible to a variety of employees, that in ways that you might have described. For example, well, I need to be home. I can't go for drinks after work. I need to go home because I have a personal responsibility. Well, suddenly now we're accessible to that employee, and we become flat to that employee. So if we have intention, and if we're mindful, we can actually accelerate a lot of our inclusivity goals through this remote workforce. This ties into one of the questions that Canberk Arslan wrote on the Q&A, and Damian Stevens also. So I'm going to position these as a follow-up to that question and see if you can fill in some gaps. Damian asks, what are your recommendations for building a strong culture remotely? And Canberk asks, how do you socialize with your team now while you can't, right? While you can't go for drinks after work, or whatever it is or team building events that are still very, very difficult to achieve. And when you do you only talk about work, and how do you differentiate work and personal connection with the team?
Yeah, I'll talk about the second and then into the first. What was fascinating when the pandemic happened is, within HubSpot, there was suddenly a huge influx of things that people had organized to try to get that connection back with people. Fun events. Like I attended one of the best ones I attended was like a wine tasting night, where people got the same wine, and we had someone who'd go through that and talk about the wine. But there was all of these kind of virtual events that you could connect with people and do things outside of work. And actually, probably at some point, there probably became too many. There was just so many different options.
Yes.
So we do try to, like, we do still have things that are, what people are really striving for is, how do I connect with someone that is not about the work? Like, how do I get to know my colleagues outside of the work? And that's kind of easier when you're in an office, because you can have these organic conversations that are unscheduled. It's easier to go for lunch with people. It's easier to hang back after work. The thing about remote work is everything is on scheduled time, right? If I want to talk to you and you're a colleague, for the most part, I have to put time in your calendar, and it just makes it more official. We go in, and then if you want to have good meeting hygiene, you have an agenda, right? And sometimes that agenda forces you to talk about work. And I think when you're remote, it's how do you create a culture of like, here's when we talk about work, but there's these other places you can connect with people. So some of the things that I've seen companies do is set up Slack channels around hobbies, or when Game of Thrones was in its last season, set up a whole Slack channel just talking about Game of Thrones, and connect people around topics that are non-work related. In terms of culture, I'm not the expert on building culture. If you think about culture is like at the company level, and I think it starts with the founders and the mission of the company. I think my job is to ensure I can provide ways for people to connect with that culture, or to actually participate in how the company can actually instill that culture across all of the different groups. But I wouldn't want to speak to culture as if it's something that I think I'm in any way an expert on, because I think for the most part, I join a company like HubSpot because I believe in the culture, not because I have like I can be a small part in helping to create that. And then as much as I can do to instill that across my teams, I will do that. But I'm definitely not like the person who is the expert on doing that.
Oksana Boguslavska asks a question, and I'm going to actually expand on her question. But first, let me read it. It says, what app do you use for team building and employee motivation? But I actually think it speaks to a larger question, which is that creating alignment in a team is a huge effort. Like, there's everything from the OKR approach popularized in the old days of Google and a variety of other approaches. But oftentimes, in order to create alignment, you need to use an app. You need to use some sort of a tool in order to roll it out, because that makes the path of least resistance to adopt a method that we're all using, as opposed to creating a random walk of various strategies. So what apps or tools can you recommend for remote team management? And obviously, we don't need to focus on Zoom and Google Meet, but more the things, I'm especially interested in things that are unique to your industry in growth marketing.
Yeah, again, I think everyone knows the kind of remote tech stack as a combination of Slack, Zoom, and G Suite, and maybe others. Some of the things that we use within our group, every team in HubSpot probably has some amount of differentiation in the tools they use. And that actually speaks to a whole other tangent you could go on, which is like B2B software for the most part has gone to consumer-led models where you and I can start to use software within the company because it's free without ever having to get sign off for the company to actually pay for that, which means that you have disparate tools being used within companies. And I think that's a great thing. Some of the tools we use to keep aligned. So if I think that question was like a team alignment. And so we have goals. I think the thing that you want to do as a remote leader and as a manager, and again, I use the term remote because this is what the session is on, but you can take that out and you should still do these things. But one thing I did notice is in remote, it's easier to lose context, right? Like, why does this decision get made? Or why is this our goal? It's just sometimes easier to lose context. And I think that's because when you're in an office, it's easier to do lazy communication, because I can just tell you all there because you're all sitting there. And I think we just have lazier practices. So for me, remote actually forces you to just be better at things. And so you want to make sure you have context around the goals. You want to make sure people have a clear place that they can see that, a shared dashboard, and there's kind of push and pull notifications about those goals. But some of the tools we use to try to keep ourselves aligned around those things that I like are Loom, which is the kind of asynchronous video updates. I think everyone who is working remote has probably used Loom at some stage, but they are the kind of default video player that we use in our group. And that doesn't mean it's across the entire company to give people updates via video. And I think that's great. Then it allows people to give email or video, whatever suits your kind of personality. The other thing that I really recommend is like writing your thoughts down in a memo and allowing people to actually interact with those instead of trying to tell people things within a meeting. We can actually get into meeting hygiene. I think that's more related to that. There's another app called Green, which is actually a newish app. It's an integration to Zoom. So when you and I are on a Zoom call, I can actually annotate the meeting with notes and get those notes back. Mural, one of the hardest things to do as a team when you're remote is actually real-time collaboration, right? If you're in an office, I can just go into a meeting room. We can get on our whiteboard. I'm a big whiteboard person and just like riffing on ideas. And so one of the tools we use that kind of gives you a little bit of that back is called Mural, which is kind of a whole work collaboration tool.
Can you spell it for us?
Yeah. Miro.
Miro. Okay. Yes, I'm aware of it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great tool.
Yeah.
So there's some other ones. There are probably a huge selection of other ones being used by my team, but I'm not aware of.
Great. Well, I can volunteer one. We use Fellow.app, which is a one-on-one meeting optimization. And it does the similar thing to what you described Green does to Zoom, where it creates the ability to annotate a meeting and create follow-ups for meetings and maintain sort of the discipline around the agenda of your one-on-ones, which tend to be, I find one-on-ones really helpful for the social aspect of work, actually. When you're talking to one person and connecting with them exclusively, you get to have a better emotional feeling of connection to the effort, but you do tend to not end up with really good agenda hygiene and follow-up discipline, and you tend to make promises that you can lose track of because they're booked back to back. So it can be very helpful to have that kind of tooling for sure. This leads me to another question around tools, but also it's actually Canberg Arslan's most highly voted question here on the Swap Card site, which is, how do you prevent miscommunication in asynchronous communication? And you must be one of the world's experts on that, as being a very senior executive out of time zone to your parent company. Do you host 24-hour meetings on Slack where you set an agenda and have a meeting that starts and ends? Do you have a particular process in mind to make sure that you include people from every time zone and that still has your voice there to direct? How do you tackle that?
Yeah, for synchronous, when we're doing in-person meetings,
No, I'm talking about async. The question is about asynchronous.
So like, okay. So like video updates and Slack updates and things like that.
Well, more for decision making, I'm thinking, right? So communication. So Canberg actually says, how do you prevent miscommunication in asynchronous?
Yeah. Okay.
And what do you do when something is misunderstood? That's his question. And there's a very highly voted question, so maybe you should tackle that first.
Yep. Yeah, this is a great question because context gets lost easily. Like within Slack messages, within video updates, within emails, I think context gets lost. Things can come across as like people can perceive them emotionally different than they would have been if it had been said in person. I think video helps because video helps to provide some sort of like context in the way that you're saying it. I think Slack messages and emails tends to lose those context. What we try to do is, I think what the kind of group try to do is communicate in the best way that they're comfortable with, and provide that person with as much context as you can. Like for the most part, why people are misunderstood is because you're just lacking amount of context, and we're trying to give updates within Slack or email in as little amount of information as possible. And I think that is smart because you don't want to kind of overwhelm people with information, but you do need context. The thing I would always advocate for in remote is, like, I see it all the time where context gets lost. I give someone an update and maybe it comes across as a different way than I had meant it, whether it's passive aggressive, and it's just because I'm trying to be direct to the point. And that's happened to me where I've received emails and like, have I done something wrong? And it's not that there's any kind of issue here. It's just that I don't have the context that person is trying to write this thing really fast because they have to go somewhere. And so you just lose that context. And so for me, it's just thinking through, does that person have the context they need to be able to understand the message I've given in the way that I want? But I do think video does help, video updates. However, not everyone is comfortable giving video updates. They feel pressure that it's a presentation. One small tiny tip that might help people, if you want to do a little bit more video updates for your teams, but you feel really uncomfortable because you feel like you have to have a really slick, well, like articulated video. The thing I say at the start of all of my Looms to my team is, I'm saying this, this is not a prepared speech. There's going to be mistakes. I'm not re-recording it, or it would advocate that it would be pointless me doing this. It doesn't save me any time if I keep re-recording it to get a really amazing video out to the team. So I just let them know pre the video starting that there's going to be tons of mistakes, and I'm going to and I'm going to change my thoughts, but it's not meant to be a presentation.
How often do you give those Loom updates, Kieran?
It really depends. Like, there's not actually a set way. I think what I do is I look to see if something needs me to, there's two ways that I give updates. I never give a lengthy update in an email. So I never try to do back and forth in an email. I think it's one of the worst ways to have a conversation. I think it's a good way to get information. I hate having conversations over email. So the two core things that I try to do is if I really need to articulate something and I think there's going to be some back and forth, I actually put it into a Google Doc and I send the Google Doc in the email. So I say, here's my thoughts on this. Here's the doc. Can we go back and forth in the doc and ship something? And then if I think I need to give an update that actually I really need to articulate my thoughts and give people real clear context, then I will give a Loom. I will try to never give updates of any great length on email.
Interesting. I actually, just to show you the diversity of possible solutions, I actually have a completely opposite approach to you. I don't use video updates, although maybe I should, but I do a monthly video Q&A, ask me anything. Me and my leadership team show up, that the whole company shows up. And if anybody's got questions and it's the right answerer is somebody deep in the org, then we'll identify that person and we'll tackle whatever question. We prepare for that by using Slido, which lets you very easily vote questions up and down to prioritize the questions of what's on the company's mind. And then in order to maintain context, we actually prepare what I call the weekend update, which is a rather, actually, I would say 15-minute read email that everybody is mandatorily required to read to start their week every Monday. And its exact purpose is set aside 15 minutes every Monday. This is the shared context that we all need to have in order to execute successfully this week. And I actually find that written communication helps people to focus the mind and set the stage for a successful week. And so there are a variety of solutions to these kinds of problems. And in fact, I think it remains to be seen what is the most effective long-term solution for this kind of stage setting and social cohesion and asynchronous communication. So I think it's a really important, it was highly voted partly because it's, I think, a really important question that is as yet unresolved.
Yep.
What would you say are your biggest lessons learned when building remote teams? Where did you struggle and then break through?
I think again, a lot of my lessons are, I think remote shines a light on some of the things that you could be better at, right? And when you're in that leadership position, I think what it helps you do is kind of shine that light in terms of things of how could I be a better communicator? How could I be a better team leader? So I'll give you a good example. I'm, for the most part, an excitable person. And so if you get me in a meeting on a subject that I'm excited at, I can dominate that conversation. I'm just like quick fire, rapid fire. And I think when you're in a meeting in person, it's harder to see your behavior. Like, I think it's not as clear that you're kind of doing that. When you go onto a video call, it becomes really apparent that you are like sucking up all of the airtime. And also, it's not a great thing for a manager or a leader to do, is to like not give that voice to the people on their team. And so that was one of the first things I noticed that I do, and not just I do, like I started to notice it from lots of other people. And so I think what remote work and remote meetings have to do is shine the light on the fact that only a few people's little screens light up and they come to the forefront each and every time. And I think one of the things that Kip, my CMO, said to me, which I always think about this, is like your job of a great leader and a manager within those meetings is to be a facilitator and to make sure that you're getting other people to like contribute their ideas. And the other part of that is that meetings are not always the best way for people to contribute their ideas. Meetings skew towards people who are very comfortable coming up with something on the spot and also don't mind saying that out loud within that space. But you need to provide other ways for people to contribute, because other people need to spend time thinking about something and then gather their thoughts and feel more comfortable in a different setting. So for example, when we are trying to make decisions, come up with ideas, we actually do most of our discussion now around memos. So I'll say, okay, here's the thing that we are trying to figure out. Here's the memo for it. Here's the document. And we'll go back and forth in the document, because everyone then has the same ability to contribute. And then in the meeting, what we try to do is ship the actual plan. And I like that a lot better because I think it's more inclusive of all personality types.
And it reminds me of Amazon's very famous, and certainly predating COVID by a decade or more, but very famous approach to product strategy and product direction and how to get projects funded, which was to start with the press release and then work backwards with all of the enabling documents that would make it real in collaboration, but to test it with what you think you could say to the market if you did get funded and did get a green light to do this. This is a really powerful asynchronous mechanism, and I just want to understand a little bit more about your memo and how do they get circulated and how long are they, and do they have a structure that you have set? I think it's a really interesting thing there.
Yeah, and it's inspired by Amazon.
It's
inspired by the way Amazon do it. So
I almost guessed that.
yeah. I think, and I love it. So when we started doing it at the kind of company leadership level, it was just how we would pick the things that we were trying to solve, and we needed clear recommendations about. So the key to a great memo for me is that your recommendation is at the top. So you have to have the person make a recommendation. It can't just be an update, because if it's an update, you can just do that in another way. You can do that through a video. You can do that through many different ways that we kind of talked about. The point of a memo is to try to make a clear recommendation about someone and let people pitch in with ideas and counterpoints and back and forth. And so we try to have recommendations at the top. Then we try to have the 4 to 6 pages of why that recommendation has been made. And then we allow people to go back and forth and to agree and disagree, which is that is the test. That is the kind of litmus test of a great leadership team, is being able to agree, disagree with each other, and then ship an idea and everyone rally around it. And so we use the meetings then to kind of ship the idea. We go through the memo within the meeting. We spend a little bit of time reading it. We read all the counterpoints, and then we actually discuss it. And then we say, actually, here's what we're going to do.
Phenomenal. I can absolutely recommend this approach to everyone who is doing this exact sort of thing. We follow a similar iterative approach as we do our company level OKRs. Like we follow the objective key result initiative pattern in our business. And we're right now in the process of doing our annual planning for next year. And it's a similar sort of publish it, take feedback, iterate it, lock it in, roll it down, trickle it out to the next level of detail that you need to do. We're in the last few minutes of this session. And so I'm just going to seize this opportunity to thank Damien, Canberg, Oksana, Adam, Luis, Dimitri, who have shared some of these questions. We've tackled most of them, and thematically we certainly have. Let me prompt you with one last thing. I don't know if you're familiar with distributed teams thought leader, Matt Mullenweg, who is the founder of Automatic, and is definitely one of the remote entrepreneurs that I think I admire, partly because of his communication and thought leadership. He describes the 5 levels of remote work. And obviously from level 1, where you can't do it because you can't support remote work, all the way through recreating the office online at level 2, adapting to the medium in level 3, async at level 4, which we tackled in this conversation. At level 5, he calls it nirvana, which is really the point of my question. Nirvana meaning a culture that works and works together in a way that outperforms any in-person company could possibly perform. So my question to you, and to leave the audience with your parting thoughts, is what is the difference between good and great remote teams? Have you ever been in a situation where you've outperformed? And what would your parting thoughts be for the audience along those lines?
Yeah, I think I need to read that. That sounds really great. I know Matt is a big advocate for remote work, and a little bit of I really think about, I think if you are a great team who enjoy working remotely, you should be a great team. Do you know what I mean by that? Like that a great
Absolutely.
team is a great team. And so when I think about what are remote teams great at, and the things that when I started becoming a remote leader and I spent time with a lot of remote companies and trying to figure out how I could be better, a big part of it is communication, the context, making sure that people can understand decisions being shipped, understand goals. I think a big part of it is alignment, having easy ways for people to both receive and give information, whether that's via video, Slack, email. You have to figure out how your team want to receive information and give information, and not try to make everyone commit to the same playbook. And then documentation is so important. Like we document the things that work for us. We document through memos. You have to become somewhat good at documenting the processes and the practices, so your team can discover those things easily, and it doesn't all have to be done on a video meeting or kind of in person if you're a hybrid companies.
That's
but
fantastic, guys.
Yeah.
We are
we're out of time.
We are out of time, but that was very, very inspiring. I could have actually listened to that all day. I've got some great ideas myself, and I hope the audience has got some amazing ideas to improve their remote team communication. Thank you,
Cool.
Kieran.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Kieran.
Paul. That was
Thank
great.
you, Simon.
See
Bye,
you in the
everybody.
next session. Goodbye.
Yeah, see you in the internet.